I arrived at the gates of my cycle promptly at 6 o'clock and pedaled up the long drive toward the house. This was the first week of June, and the rhododendrons were massed in great banks of pinks and purple all the way along either side. I was feeling unusually blithe and dauntless. The previous day's experiment with rats had made it impossible now for anyone to take me by surprise. I knew exactly what to expect, and I was armed accordingly. All around me, the little fence was up. "Ah, good evening, Vicar," Lady Birdwell cried, advancing upon me with both arms outstretched. I stood my ground and looked her straight in the eye. "How's Birdwell?" I said. "Still up in the city?" I doubt whether she had ever before in her life heard Lord Birdwell referred to thus by someone who had never even met him. It stopped her dead in her tracks. She looked at me queerly and didn't seem to know how to answer. "I'll take a seat if I may," I said. I walked past toward the terrace where a group of 9 or 10 guests were settled comfortably in cane chairs sipping their drinks. They were mostly women, the usual crowd of them, all dressed in white tennis clothes, and as I strode in among them in my own sober black suiting seemed to fit and give me, I thought. Just the right amount of separateness from the occasion. The ladies greeted me with smiles. I nodded at them and sat down in the vacant chair, but I didn't smile back. "I think perhaps I'd better finish my story another time," Miss Elphinstone was saying. "I don't believe the vicar would approve," she giggled and gave an arch look. I knew she was waiting for me to come out with my usual little nervous laugh and to say my usual little sentence about how broad-minded I was, but I did nothing of the sort. I simply raised one side of my upper lip until it shaped itself into a tiny curl of contempt. I practiced in a mirror that morning. And then I said sharply in a loud voice, "Mens sana in corpore sano." "What's that?" she cried. "Come again, Vicar?" "A clean mind and a healthy body," I answered. "It's a family motto." There was an odd kind of silence for quite a long time after this. I could see the women exchanging glances with one another, frowning and shaking their heads. "Oh, the vicar's in the dumps," Miss Foster announced. She was the one who bred cats. "I think the vicar needs a drink." "Thank you," I said. "I never imbibe, you know that." "Then do let me fetch you a nice cool glass of fruit cup." This last sentence came softly and was rather suddenly from someone just behind me. To my right, there was a note of such genuine concern in the speaker's voice that I turned around. I saw a lady of singular beauty, whom I've only met once before, about a month ago. Her name was Miss Roach, and I remember that she had struck me then as being a person far out of the usual run. I had been particularly impressed by her gentle and reticent nature, and the fact that I had felt comfortable in her presence proved beyond doubt that I was not the only sort of person who would try to impinge on herself upon me in any way. "I'm sure you must be tired after cycling all that distance," she was saying now. I swiveled around right on my chair, and she looked at me carefully. Looked at her carefully. She was certainly a striking person, unusually muscular for a woman, with broad shoulders and powerful arms and a huge calf bulging on each leg. The flush of the afternoon's exertions was still upon her, and her face glowed with a healthy red sheen. "Thank you so much, Miss Roach, but I never touch any alcohol in any form. Maybe a small glass of lemon squash? The fruit cup is only made of fruit, Padre." How I loved the person who called me Padre. The word has a military ring about it that just conjures up visions of stern discipline and officer rank. Fruit cup. Miss Elphinstone said. "It's harmless." "My dear man, it's nothing but vitamin C," Miss Foster said. "Much better for you than fizzy lemonade," Lady Birdwell said. Carbon dioxide attacks the lining of the stomach. I'll get you some, Miss Roach said, smiling at me pleasantly. It was a good open smile. It wasn't a trace of guile or mischief from one corner of the mouth to the other. She stood up and walked over to the prank table. I saw her slicing an orange, then an apple, then a cucumber, then a grape, and dropping the pieces into a glass. Then she poured in a large quantity of liquid from a bottle whose label I couldn't quite read without my spectacles. But I fancied the name Jim or Point or Tim or Pim or some such word. I hope there's enough left, Lady Burwell called out. Those pretty children of mine do love it so. Plenty, Miss Roach answered, and she brought it to me and set it on the table. Even without tasting, I could easily understand why children adored it. The liquid itself was dark amber red, and there were large, huge, great hunks of fruit floating around among the ice cubes in the top. Top of it all, Miss Roach had placed a sprig of mint. I guess that the mint had been placed there especially for me, to take some of the sweetness away and to lend a touch of grown-upness to a concoction that was otherwise so obviously for youngsters. Too sticky for you, Padre? It's delectable, I said, sipping it. It's quite perfect. It seemed a pity to gulp it down quickly after the trouble Miss Roach had taken to make it, but it was so refreshing I couldn't resist. Do let me make you another. I liked the way she waited until I set the glass on the table instead of trying to take it out of my hand. I wouldn't eat the mint if I were you, Miss Elphinstone said. I better get out another bottle from the house, Lady Burwell called out. You're going to need it, Mildred. Do that, Miss Roach replied. I drink gallons of this stuff myself, she went on speaking to me. I don't think you say that I'm exactly what you call emaciated. No, indeed, I answered fervently. I was watching her again as she mixed me another brew, noticing how the muscles ripped under the skin of the arm and then embraced the bottle. And her neck was also uncommonly fine when seen from behind, not thick and stringy like the necks of all those so-called modern beauties, but thick and strong with a slight ridge running down either side where the sinews bulged. It wasn't easy to guess the age of a person like this, but I doubted whether she could have been more than 48 or 9. I just finished my second glass of fruit cup when I began to experience a most peculiar sensation. I seemed to be floating up out of my chair, and hundreds of little warm waves came washing it under me, lifting me higher and higher. I felt as buoyant as a bubble, and everything around me seemed to be bobbing up and down, swirling gently from side to side. It was all very pleasant, and I was overcome by an almost irresistible desire to break into song. Feeling happy, Miss Roach's voice sounded miles and miles away. And when I turned to look at her, I was astonished to see how near she really was. She was also bobbing up and down. Terrific, I answered. I'm feeling absolutely terrific. Her face was large and pink. It was so close to me now that I could almost see the pale carpet of fuzz covering both of her cheeks. And the way the sunlight caught each tiny separate hair that made it shine like gold. All of a sudden I found myself wanting to put out a hand and stroke those tiny cheeks of hers with my fingers. To tell the truth, I wouldn't have objected in the least if she tried to do the same to me. Listen, she said softly. How about the two of us take a little stroll down the garden to see the lupins? Fine, I answered. Lovely. Anything you say. There's a small Georgian summer house along the side of the croquet garden in Lady Burwell's lawn in Lady Burwell's garden. And the very next thing I knew, I was sitting inside it on a kind of chaise longue, and Miss Roach was beside me. I was still bobbing up and down, and so was she, and for that matter, so was the summer house. But I was feeling so wonderful. I asked Miss Roach if she wouldn't like to give me a song. Not now, she said, encircling me with her arms and squeezing my chest against her so hard it hurt. Don't, I said, melting. That's That's better. She kept saying, that's much better, isn't it? Had Miss Roach or any other female tried to do this sort of thing to me an hour before, I don't know quite what would have ever happened. I think that I would have probably fainted. I might have even died. But here I was now, with the same old me, actually relishing the contact of those enormous bare arms against my body. Also, this was the most amazing thing of all. I was beginning to feel the urge to reciprocate. I took the lobe of her left ear between my thumb and forefinger and tugged at it playfully. Naughty boy, she said. I tugged harder and squeezed it at the same time. This roused her to such a pitch that she began to grunt and snort like a hog. Her breathing became loud and stertorous. Kiss me, she ordered. What? I said. Come on, kiss me. At that moment, I saw her mouth. I saw this great mouth of hers coming slowly down on top of me, starting to open and coming closer and closer and opening wider and wider, and suddenly my whole stomach began to roll right over inside me, and I was stiff with terror. No, I shrieked. Don't, Mommy, don't. I can only tell you that I never in all my life seen anything more terrifying than that mouth. I simply could not stand it coming at me like that. Had it been a red hot iron someone would have pushed in my face, I wouldn't have been nearly so petrified. I swear I wouldn't. The strong arms were around me, pinning me so that I couldn't move, and the mouth was getting larger and larger, and then all at once it was right on top of me, huge and wet and cavernous, and the next second I was inside it. I was right inside this enormous mouth, lying on my stomach along the length of the tongue, with my feet somewhere along the back of the throat, and I knew instinctively that unless I got myself out at once, I was going to be swallowed alive. Just like the baby rabbit. I could feel my legs being drawn down to the throat by some kind of suction, and quickly I threw up my arms and grabbed hold of the lower front teeth and held on for dear life. My head was near the mouth entrance, and I could actually look out right between the lips and see a little patch of the world outside. Sunlight and the polished wooden floor of the summer house. And on the floor itself, a gigantic foot and a white tennis shoe. I had a good grip of my fingers on the edge of the teeth, and in spite of the suction, I was managing to haul myself up slowly toward the daylight. When suddenly the upper teeth came down so down on my knuckles and started chopping away at them so fiercely I had to let go. I went sliding down down the throat, feet first, clutching madly at this and that as I went. Everything was so smooth and slippery, I couldn't get a grip. I glimpsed a bright flash of gold on the left as I slid past the last of the molars, and then 3 inches farther on what I saw what must have been the uvula above me, dangling like a thick red stalactite from the roof of the throat. I grabbed at it with both hands, that the thing slithered through my fingers, and I went on down. I remember screaming for help. I could hardly hear the sound of my own voice above the noise of the wind that was caused by the throat owner's breathing. There seemed to be a gale blowing all the time, a queer, erratic gale that blew alternately very cold as the air came in, and very hot as it went out again. I managed to get my elbows hooked up over a sharp, fleshy ridge, I presume the epiglottis, and for a brief moment I hung there, defying the suction and scrabbling with my feet to find a foothold on the wall of the larynx. But the throat gave a huge swallow and jerked me away, and down I went again. And from then on, there was nothing else for me to catch hold of, and down I went until soon my legs were dangling below me in the upper reaches of the stomach, and I could feel the slow, powerful pulsing of the peristalsis. Peristalsis, dragging away at my ankles, pulling me down and down and down. Far above me, outside in the open air, I could hear distant babble of women's voices. It's not true. But my dear Mildred, how awful. The man must be mad. Your poor mouth, just look at it. A sex maniac. A sadist. Someone ought to write up to the bishop. And then Mrs. Roach's voice, louder than the other, swearing and screeching like a parakeet. He's damn lucky I didn't kill him, the little bastard. I said to him, listen, if I ever happen to want any of my teeth extracted, I'll go to a dentist. Not to a goddamn vicar. It isn't as though I'd given any encouragement either. Where's he now, Mildred? God knows, in the bloody summer house, I suppose. Hey girls, let's go root him out. Oh dear. Oh dear. Looking back on it now, some 3 weeks later, I don't know how I ever came out through the nightmare of that awful afternoon without taking leave of my senses. A gang of witches like that is a very dangerous thing to fool around with. And had they managed to catch me in the summer house right then and there when their blow was up, they would as likely as not have torn me limb from limb on the spot. Either that or I should have been frog marched down to the police station with Lady Birdwell and Miss Roach leading the procession through the main street of the village. But of course they didn't catch me. They didn't catch me then, and they haven't caught me yet. And my luck continues to hold. I think I have a fair chance of evading them altogether. Or anyway, for a few months until they forget about the whole affair. As you might have guessed, I'm having to keep entirely to myself and to take no part in public affairs or social life. I find that writing is the most salutary way. Occupation at a time like this. And I spend many hours a day playing with sentences. I regard each sentence as a little wheel, and my ambitions lately has been to gather several hundred of them together at once to fit them all end to end, with the cogs interlocking like gears, but with each wheel a different size, each turning a different speed. And now and then again I try to put a really big one right next to a very small one, and in such a way that the big one turning slowly make the small one spin so fast that it hums. Very tricky, that. I also sing madrigals in the evenings, but I miss my own harpsichord terribly. All the same, this isn't such a bad place, and I made myself as comfortable as I possibly can. It is a small chamber situated in what is almost certainly the primary section of the duodenal loop. Just before it begins to run vertically downward in front of the right kidney. The floor is quite level. Indeed, it was the very first level place I came to during that horrible descent down Miss Roach's throat. And that's the only reason I managed to stop at all. Above me, I can see a pulpy sort of opening that I take to be the pylorus, where the stomach enters the small intestine. I can still remember some of those diagrams my mother used to show me. And below me, there's a funny little hole in the wall where the pancreatic duct enters the lower section of the duodenum. It is all a trifle bizarre for a man of conservative tastes like myself. Personally, I prefer oak furniture and parquet flooring. But there is one thing here that pleases me greatly, and that is the walls. They are lovely and soft, like a sort of padding. And the advantage of this, I can bounce up against them as much as I wish without hurting myself. There are several other people about, which is rather surprising, but thank God they are every one of them males. For some reason or another, they all wear white coats, and they all bustle around pretending to be very busy and important. In actual fact, they are an uncommonly ignorant bunch of fellows. They don't even seem to realize that they're where they are. I try to tell them, but they refuse to listen. I sometimes get so angry and frustrated with them that I lose my temper and start to shout, and then a sly, mistrustful look comes over their faces, and they begin backing slowly away and saying, "Now then, take it easy. Take it easy, Vicar. There's a good boy. Take it easy." What sort of talk is that? But there is one oldish man. He comes in to see me every morning after breakfast, who appears to live slightly closer to reality than others. He is civil and dignified, and I imagine he is lonely because he likes nothing better than to sit quietly in my own room and listen to me talk. The only trouble is whenever we get on the subject of our whereabouts, he starts telling me that he's going to help me escape. He said it again this morning, and we had quite an argument about it. But can't you see? I said patiently, I don't want to escape. My dear vicar, why ever not? I keep telling you because they're all searching for me outside. Who? Miss Elphinstone and Miss Roach and Miss Pratley and all the rest of them. What nonsense. Oh, yes, they are. And I imagine that they're after you as well, but you won't admit it. No, my friend, that they're not after me. Then what? May I ask precisely what you are doing down here? A bit of stumper for him. That one. I could see you didn't know how to answer it. I bet you're fooling around with Miss Roach and got yourself swallowed up exactly just the same as I did. I bet that's exactly what happened, only you're ashamed to admit it. He looked suddenly so wan and defeated when I said this that I felt sorry for him. Would you like me to sing you a song? I asked. But he got up without answering and went quietly out into the corridor. Ah, cheer up, I called after him. Don't be depressed. There's always some balm in Gilead.